I'm Jake De Wulf from Ireckonu, talking to Chi Chan, who is our Chief Commercial Officer, and Sandro, who is the CTO for Rufus Leonard out of London. Recently, these two guys were featured in a publication discussing first-party data and what it is, how it's used, and how companies these days can leverage it and further bake it into their digital strategies moving forward. Sandro, I might just hand it over to you. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what first-party data is?
So I think it's simple. First-party data is data you own, that you collected, and that you got directly from your consumers or customers, and you got consent to use it.
And how does that compare to something like second or third-party data?
So second-party data is usually, they call it someone else first-party data. You usually bought it, or somebody agreed to share with you, or you had an exchange to get that data somehow. Third-party data, on the other hand, is usually aggregated from several sources and sold by an exchange. And a lot of the times it's not as relevant to your customers and to your use case as if you had owned that data and you've collected that data. The quality of the data will likely not be as good as if you collected it for a certain use case that you have a certain ambition to use it for. So there's a lot of advantages to use first-party data, but people haven't been using it because of the perceived complexity of accumulating it.
And Chi, in the hospitality space specifically, what are some examples of first-party data?
Like the customer interact with the brand on their website, they call their reservation center, or any information they collect during the stay at the hotel.
Okay, interesting. And typically this is something that's offered proactively by the guests themselves, or is it also just captured throughout the guest journey?
I think both. Right? Some is during the reservation process. You got to give certain information. And then also during that time, you collect the consents from the customer. And during the stay and post-stay, certain interaction, you can also capture additional insight about your customer.
And I would envision that this is something that over time is further and further enriched. It's not just a single snapshot, but as you get to know your guests more, you build a bigger profile of them.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, first parties, I think we view it as like the most valuable information you have, and it's really also the key component or ingredient for you to build direct customer relationship and also greater loyal base.
First-party data was always very useful, and the bigger companies are making more use of it. So you see big companies like Amazon, Netflix, and they give you a very individualized experience, is because they've been collecting a lot of data for you, about you. And the more you collect data about the user's behaviors, not in a single channel, but you collect data about when they're going to F&B, when they're going to the check-in, when you're going to your app, you're actually collecting behaviors that determine what the intent of the customer is. So sometimes the customer it's not like they're requesting that you do this for me, is that you can predict what they want to do without them asking you. And that's when you get those wow moments in the experience with your customer, is that, how did they know that? And if you go to F&B and said, look, we don't have the cocktail you want, but I know this type of cocktail that comes from the country that you usually talk about. And sometimes you get this wow experience that you would only be able to get if you had collected a lot of the behaviors about the users. And if you just bought that data from somewhere else, you'd never be able to use that in place or use that in real time when it's the right time to activate those experiences. And do more analytics on top of it to understand if you need to change your propositions. There are some needs from the customers that you're not serving. The more you collect that data and the more you work on it and you think of it as the very valuable things you have, you will probably derive more value, more profitability, and get a better user experience out of it.
So it's interesting. You need to make a distinction based on, when people hear data collection, it can almost be this dirty word, right? Where they say, oh, this company's trying to steal my information. They don't need my social security number. But really, it's much more than that, right? It's a behavioral tendencies. It's trying to truly understand people via repeatedly engaging with brands. And that, as you said, has happened, with some of the biggest players in the industry. How does that ring true within hospitality, Chi?
In Ireckonu, we always put more value on first-party data, right? We help our customers defining their data strategy, then using our middleware to organize and collaborate the data once everything is clean and in one place, we leverage our application solution to monetize it. The result is pretty simple, right? Driving greater customer experience in engagement in a meaningful way, and also having more direct customer relationship, high retention, greater efficiency and return in marketing investment, right? Other data point is also critical, but beside your own information, right? Those other data points are there to enrich the outcome and enhance the execution process, but never a main driver to transform the business.
So I think it's really important for us to recognize just how valuable this is. But I think based on some trends and changes within the marketplace, Sandro, which I'm hoping you can speak to, it's going to become even more and more important for companies to take a first-party driven approach. Can you speak to why that is?
There's a privacy movement going on, and consumers are gathering steam. They're more aware that they're giving away their data. Regulators are aware that the consumers are not happy with it. They're aware that people are not using their data responsibly, and consumers want to be confident that you respect the data that you're giving them. And it's starting to happen that consumers want this two-way exchange of value. Please give me value in return for my data. And then all of this led to some regulations such as GDPR or the e-privacy regulation of California and the California Consumer Privacy Act. As the regulations moved on, the big tech leaders started to say, actually, I have to get in on this. And Apple and Google and a lot of other people are now implementing those privacy technologies. And they're implementing it in a way that third-party cookies are not going to be available anymore, or identifier sharing like some of the operating systems used to do. They're not going to be available anymore. That means that around somewhere in 2022, 85% of the browser market is going to block third-party cookies, which means that first-party data is going to be the leading source of customer data, and you will have no more options. The other thing that might come in the future, to jump ahead a little bit, is Web 3.0 is a lot about privacy and not giving the control of your functionality and data to other people. So you're going to see that there will be an even greater focus on this over the coming years. So this is just the beginning of it, about the privacy revolution.
And Chi, how will this impact things such as bookings within hotels, which are historically done, pulling on so much cookie tracking and third-party data? Because, for example, if I know I want to go on vacation in 6 months, there might be various points throughout that 6 months that I actually look and eventually book, right? So how is it that hotels are going to respond to this?
That's why you have to really focus on building the trust with the customer. Right, that is the key component. You got to start really, the brand needs to start today, if they haven't done it, by being open and honest about how and when they collect the personal information, and how to use this information to drive the engagement and show advertising that are valuable to the customer, and then by putting the user in control of the data.
I guess a couple of points I wanted to touch on was related to how business leaders can actually start to take some first-party data-driven steps to actually incorporate this into their broader organizations. Of course, as you said, Sandro, working through sort of the entire customer journey and first, as she mentioned, making customers aware that their data would be captured. But what are some practical tips that business leaders could actually use to start to bake this into their business practices?
So I think one of the first things they could do is to try to change the mindset of the organization. And as Chi was saying, is customers need to trust you. In order for the customers to trust you, they need to understand the value exchange proposition. And the mindset of your organization needs to understand that giving data to you means you need to give something back. And that benefit can be just an excellent experience. It can be a discount, can be additional service, or just making sure the customer aligns to your brand values. And this transparency-based trust that she was talking about requires you to actually have a deep understanding how each element of personal data that you're asking is used and where it's used. And you have to give the customer that visibility and the customer that control. Luckily, there are lots of technology offerings that can help you with this. such as a customer data platform, a DMP, a CDP, or a consent management platform. And all of this will probably support you in a journey that will typically help you store that personal customer data and manage their permission. But most importantly, it will give you the control to activate that information in your marketing activities or your customer experience when you need to. And these tools weren't very mature. They're getting mature now, and they're becoming available at a much more cost-effective proposition because of the upcoming SaaS CDP platforms that exist.
And is it important, especially for hoteliers, Chi, who have historically sometimes lagged when it comes to new technologies, that they jump on this sooner rather than later? I think one, just simply because the outcome of not doing it soon enough brings actually legal and potentially fairly damaging consequences. But also it's a bit of a first mover advantage, right? Because some hotels with giving everyone a water bottle, for example, one size fits non-loyalty programs doesn't necessarily work these days.
Yeah, I think a lot of company has really transformed, especially from collecting the consent. That's the first thing, because by law, right, there's a deadline, everybody had done it, collecting information, populate the cookie consents and all this on the website. But now the key component is, how do you create a clean and organized data platform so that you can really transform your brand, the business, into a more data-centric experience organization, right? So that you can move from fundamental needs to deep connection with the customer, not just for collecting the information for the sake of collecting, but really using it to drive the connection. And then from the same experience for all customer to personalize experiences by customer. That's how you can really do it, instead of just talking about it. And then once you do that, you will be able to increase the customer willingness to pay, right? Because you have the trust, they tie to your brand, and you can capture greater margin for the business. But it's the first step is really understand your data strategy. And then you can figure out how to leverage different applications to drive the result.
So a couple more questions. I think you touched on it briefly, Sandro, but I'm curious, we're obviously speaking about moves that business leaders can make within the next couple months to the next year. What will this space look like in 5-10 years? Is it just going to become so hyper-personalized, or will we still see some generalization taking place?
So nowadays, you expect most business to have a CRM. If you talk to a business that doesn't have a CRM, it's odd, right? It feels like you must be very old-fashioned not to have a CRM. But CRMs have a very narrow remit, and it usually doesn't cover all the interactions with your customer bases. It covers very specific interactions. But if you think your customer is doing so much with you, so many behaviors that you're not capturing, you don't know if they go to the gym 3 times a day. But I think the rise of the CDPs, which is the customer data platforms, they come in lots of flavors and they come with different names. But it's about aggregating all the behavior in one place and give you a single customer view, or a view from above of all your customers. What will happen is that all of your systems, all of your sensors will start providing first-party data to it. This will become a big lake. You're going to have sensors, you're going to have all of the systems you buy, all of the experience systems and that has user behavior will be sending data to it. Over time, there will be a lot of data for you as a human to process. We will start putting AI models on top of it. It's not uncommon already, and the big companies do, and you're going to see cheaper CDPs where you can run models to understand propensity of buying, the type of customer, are they soon about to leave, and you'll be able to actually activate that data at the time that will be more likely for the customer to be wowed, or the customer is about to leave. You'll be able to use a lot more of that information. So what will happen is that these services will actually deliver a lot more value from your data than what you can do now. Right now, it's a lot of data, you don't know what to do with it. The services that are coming will make it easier for you to give an individualized experience on all of the touch points that you interact with client, but also to give you the insights when you need to give new propositions, when you need to keep that client happier. And with the move down of what I assume will be the lower cost of keeping that data and activating that data over the next 5 years, I think you need to get on board on that, because otherwise you will be one of the late movers on something that will derive a lot of value and experience to your clients.
And Chi, what are some points within the hotel journey? Obviously, we're taking a very business-centric approach, but what are some opportunities to leverage first-party data across the guest journey, not just from a direct advertising standpoint, but actually as a guest, what would I experience if my hotel A is leveraging first-party data effectively versus Hotel B, which is still using spreadsheets?
Definitely focus on driving more direct customer relationship, right? The first party is the key data source to drive business transformation. And as Sandro said it, right, machine learning will continue to mature. And you'll be able to stitch all the information together and really use it real time in every step of the way. We, in the last, I don't know how many years in the industry, always talk about data silo. But with this customer data platform approach, you can also eliminate department silo, right? How the commercial team, marketing team acquiring the customer, and then how to make sure to take certain information, pass it to the people on the ground, the operation, for example, at the hotel, the front desk, housekeeping, the food and beverage, even the host at the restaurant. How do they leverage soundbite, a piece's information at the right moment? And that will really drive the supplies and delight, right? Drive that wow moment. But you got to do the fundamental basic. Don't just go saying, hey, we're going to go to the moon tomorrow, right? You got to do the fundamental basic. When you do that well, then you can start adding on it. But a lot of time, many brands is making mistake is they want the end game. They want to go all the way to the end, right? That's 10 step there. They want to go number 10 instead of taking the first step. And also the other thing is important is the adoption inside the organization. Having technology is one key component, but the other component is you have the adoption within the organization. Have everybody have the same alignment. Why this is important? Why consent is important? Why protecting customer data is important? Why we collecting an email address? Why? If you do the education, then you have the organizational alignment, then you will make it very successful.
Well, guys, I think we're getting close to the end of our time, but this has been fantastic. If people want to hear a little bit more about first-party data or your thoughts on it, are they all right to reach out to you directly, or what's the best way to get in touch?
They can reach out to us directly. We at Rufus are really happy to help anybody that needs our help.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then from my Ireckonu perspective, please visit our website, and then you can reach out to us. We can help you define your data strategy and figure out what application you will need to monetize those data and then take you to the next level. We don't want to be left behind, and you want to probably stay on this curve because privacy is here to stay. Customers want to have more control of their own data, and then machine learning AI continue to mature, which means things will moving pretty rapidly in the next few years, and then continue investment in that space will win the business.
Well, we hope that everyone liked the article that we put out. I think we'll hopefully be able to see some more in this space coming soon. Sandro, thank you, sir, and Chi, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.